Like to welcome everybody to this webinar on energy funding and grant opportunities. And we have a good list of speakers here today. Like to start by introducing myself. My name is Jim Johnson. I'm the Region Director for the Small Business Development Center at South Carolina State University. And SBDCs, as we call them, it's an organization funded by the Small Business Administration. And our mission is to help South Carolina small businesses be more successful. And we usually do that through confidential one-on-one consulting for no charge. And also we do a lot of outreach and education like today. So I'm excited to be able to speak with everybody today about energy. In my office at SE State, we cover a mostly rural region of South Carolina throughout the Midlands and Low Country. And one of our close partners is the USDA, USDA Rural Development. So we've become familiar with a lot of their programs. They have a great program that we'll speak about later today called Rural Energy for America, which is a grant program and a loan program for energy projects. So we work with a lot of other folks too around the state. And first I'd like to introduce Kyle Player, who is with the South Carolina Department of Agriculture, and she is the director of the ACRE program. And so we have a real close relationship with the Department of Ag, as I said, working in rural communities and with farmers and agribusiness. We work with them a lot, and ACRE is the sponsor of this webinar today, so they've helped make this possible as well. So Kyle, do you want to say a few words about ACRE?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And we're glad to have y'all on here today. As Jim said, we just try and do everything at SCDA we can to get as much information out to y'all as possible. And a lot of the ways I do that is by partnering with Jim to help put on some of these webinars and sponsoring so he can get them done and get speakers in front of y'all. But I won't go into too long of a spiel, but like Jim said, I work at SCDA for I run the Agribusiness Center for Research and Entrepreneurship. And we help rural entrepreneurs in ag by giving out grant funding. We do a curriculum with some grant funding. Everything's free of charge. We do workshops across the state. Again, COVID has messed that up a bit. We've been doing webinars. But if you're at all interested, if you have a business that you've already started and are looking to take it to the next step, we have an advanced program in the spring. If you just started a business or have an idea of wanting to start a business, again, agriculture business, we do a curriculum in the fall. So please reach out. I'll put my email in the chat. So I won't take up too much more of y'all's time, but thanks again for being on today, and we hope y'all find this useful.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. And through our work at the SBDC with small businesses, one of the big issues for many businesses is always energy. Energy consumption and usage is one of the few, I guess, variable expenses you can control as a business person. So it's always something that you can look at. But the fact that it is for a lot of folks a big concern, it got me to working with other folks in the energy sector. And one of those is the South Carolina Energy Office. And so today we have with us Rick Campana from the South Carolina Energy Office, and they're an awesome resource for small business residents, anything related with energy in South Carolina. And Rick is going to talk to you today about some programs and resources out there for folks in regards to energy. So Rick, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thanks, Jim. So like Jim said, my name is Rick Campana. I'm an energy specialist with the South Carolina Energy Office. We are a state government entity. We're housed within the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff. And we try and promote energy efficiency, renewable energy, and clean transportation to South Carolina. And we have a lot of different programs and things that we administer to try and advance those. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is our Energy Saver tool. You can see the link there, energysaver.sc.gov. This is a tool that we launched last year in August. And essentially it is a lookup tool for both commercial and residential energy saving programs. And the tool can be used to find any type of energy efficiency or renewable energy saving programs, including grants and loans, rebates, tax incentives, and residential low income programs as well. So these are all from a variety of sources, whether it be from utility companies or state government or federal government. This tool can pull all of those various funding sources. It'll also allow you to print and export those results. And we also have some tips on there on how to save energy. And this is kind of a brief snapshot of the process of using the Energy Saver tool. The first step when you go there is it's going to ask you to select either for your home or for your business. So whether you want residential or commercial respectively. After you do that, it'll ask for your utility provider. And then after you select that, it'll ask for your business type if you selected for your business earlier, or if you selected residential, it'll ask for your low income eligibility to pull any of those potential programs. And then it'll spit out all of the results, which can be printed in an Excel or PDF file. So it's very user-friendly to get all of those various incentive programs. And so you'll find programs from the Energy Office. You'll even find the REAP program will be on there if you select, an applicable type for that. So it's a very useful tool. Moving on to some of the financing programs that the Energy Office administers. Now, the financing programs we have are primarily geared towards state entities and nonprofits. So there isn't as much for-profit entities, but I wanted to go over these in case we have any nonprofits on the webinar. So first we have some loan programs. There's the Consular Fund loan is our main loan program. And this provides loans ranging from $25,000 up to $500,000 for projects in the areas of energy efficiency, renewable energy, or clean transportation. It has a low 1.5% interest rate, and the terms can be as long as 10 years, depending on the payback on the project. As I mentioned, this is open to nonprofits and government entities. And the payments on the loan are due quarterly for nonprofits. So that is something you'll want to be aware of if you're interested in this program. Also, we have Consular Fund Plus. I won't go into too much detail on this because the funding for that has been unavailable for some time. It is essentially like the Consular Fund loan, but includes a 30% grant component, which is why the funds have dried up on that for the time being. That eligibility also does not include the nonprofits. So it doesn't have as wide an eligibility pool as the regular Consular Fund. Now, for-profit businesses, we work with the South Carolina Business Development Corporation, and they offer what is called the Energy Efficiency Revolving Loan, or ERL. So it is essentially the private sector sister program to Consular Fund. And the loans range from $50,000 up to $1 million. It doesn't have a predetermined, set in stone interest rate, unlike Consular Fund, but they do keep it low around that 1.5% that you saw for Consular Fund. And again, the terms are up to 10 years. And this is open to all commercial entities. And this is, like I said, administered by the South Carolina Business Development Corporation, but they work with us on these projects, and we help with the technical aspects of the review while they handle all the financial stuff. And more information is available on their website there. And just so that you're aware, on our website, energy.sc.gov, on the left side, you click loans, grants, and tax incentives, and then loans. And then you'll want to click on the relevant loan program. Our website is a little cumbersome, but it is in the process of being updated. But currently, this is where you'll find those programs. And then moving on to grants, we have our mini grant program. Now, again, this is the same eligibility as Consular funds. So it is for nonprofits and government entities. This is a competitive grant program with very limited funding. And the individual grant awards only go up to $10,000. So they are geared towards high impact demonstration projects. We want to find projects that have not just good energy savings, but also educational or demonstration value. And this is an annual program. It opens in July of each year, which is the start of our fiscal year. So the program is open for applications right now. It closes, I believe, on July 30th. So you have a few weeks to submit applications for this program if you're an eligible entity. And these applications these projects then also need to be completed by the end of our fiscal year, which would be June 30th of 2022. So it's a very compressed timeline to do these projects. Like I said, it is for smaller projects, but if you are a nonprofit or government entity, I definitely encourage looking into that as it is available now. And then once it's closed at the end of July, it won't open again until next year. Moving on beyond our financing program, we also offer energy assessments, and this is through our Energy Technical Assistance Program. As you can probably guess, this is again for state entities and nonprofits. If you attended this presentation last year, I didn't include this because at the time we weren't able to offer this service with COVID going on, but we have reopened this for applications. And this is a program where we try and provide practical guidance for organizations to reduce their energy use and energy costs. And there's three major components, which is a utility bill analysis, a walkthrough energy assessment, and then the funding advisement. And so the utility bill analysis will take your bills and we'll analyze them based on weather data and to normalize the utility data. And ideally, we want to have several years of data so that we can see, compare against the weather and see what trends are there. And then we would do a walkthrough energy assessment where we go through your facility, log all the equipment that's there. And then we would prepare a report where we'll put together recommended energy saving improvements that you could do and what potential savings you could see from those measures. And then we'll also include any external funding sources you could pursue for those measures. Now, this service is limited in availability as we're just a two-person team that does these assessments. But if this is something you're interested in, the application is available on our website at that link that's there. And, I'd recommend if you're interested, choosing, if you have multiple facilities, choosing a building that, is either representative or high use, one that needs the most attention, and we can focus on that. Moving on to a couple of programs that are not by the Energy Office, but you may find applicable to your organization. The first is the Clemson Industrial Assessment Center, or IAC. They provide free audits for qualifying South Carolina businesses. In order to qualify, it needs to be a US-based manufacturer with yearly energy bills ranging from $100,000 to $2.5 million. And you also have to be located within 150 miles of the Industrial Assessment Center, but they include both their Clemson and Charleston campuses. So effectively they cover the entire state, if not most of it. And in addition to those assessments, they also provide end user training for energy systems. So if this is something, if you fall on those qualifications, you may want to check this out if you need an energy audit or any assistance with your energy use. And then another similar program out of North Carolina is the North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center. They also provide customized technical assessments and energy audits. Now, their services may not be free, so you can contact them for a quote. They are also the Southeast partner for the U.S. Department of Energy's Combined Heat and Power Technical Assistance. So if combined heat and power is a technology that you're interested in, they're particularly helpful with that. So that's all I have. If there's any questions, feel free to ask during the webinar, or if you think of anything later, feel free to call or email me. My information is there. We're here to help any South Carolina residents or businesses. That's what we're here to do.
All right. Well, thank you, Rick. Do you have any questions? Anyone? Any questions for Rick? You can throw those questions in the chat. Let's see. Okay. Don't see any questions. So thanks, Rick. We appreciate the information on the Energy Office. A lot of good programs going on. Hopefully you can continue to grow those programs as well. Hold on, we might have one. Okay, we have a question. Can you email the presentation recording if we missed the beginning? Yes, this presentation is being recorded and it will be uploaded to YouTube, and we'll send the links out to all the registered attendees. All right, thanks, Rick. Okay, we'll move on now and talk a little bit more about a few other programs for energy grants and funding. And the program that I want to feature today outside of the Office of Energy is the USDA Rural Development program called REAP, which stands for Rural Energy for America. And if folks out there are not familiar with the Rural Development Office for USDA, every state has a USDA office. Just about every county has a USDA service center. Not every county has a rural development office, but there's always a regional rural development office, which you can find at their site. You can just Google USDA Rural Development, South Carolina, and you can probably pull up a map of the different locations. But USDA is the biggest funder of rural America, and they have a lot of great programs. Today we're featuring the Rural Energy for America program, which revolves around energy. So without further ado, I will go ahead and start in on it. So REAP, as it's also known as, it's a federal program. It was funded by Congress in the Farm Bill, which comes out every, I think, 4 years. So I think the end of December 2019 was the last Farm Bill that passed. So we'll get another one in 4 years after that, probably about around 2024 or so. So this program has been included in the Farm Bill for quite some time. And included in this program are grants and loans that are available for installing renewable energy systems and for energy efficiency improvements. So that's what this program centers around: renewable energy and energy efficiency improvements. So with every grant, just like Rick just mentioned, with a lot of their programs, it's only for nonprofits or local government or government entities. So if you're a for-profit, some of those programs he has, you do not qualify for. And with any grant, the first step is to figure out if you're eligible for this project. So how do you decide eligibility for the REAP grant? Well, there's two ways to be eligible. First, you can be an agricultural producer. And if you're an agricultural producer, it doesn't matter if you're in a rural or urban setting. So you can be in the middle of Charleston or Columbia and still be eligible if you're an agricultural producer. Now, the thing about grants, any grant, and especially federal grants, when you start digging into the definitions, of eligibility, that's when, rubber meets the road, so to speak. So what is an ag producer? Usually it's that you derive over 51% of your income from agricultural pursuits. But, a lot of the times when these presentations are made, they're kind of made in a general fashion because there's so many exceptions to every rule. Am I agricultural producer? Probably, but that's why it's good to get in touch with somebody and talk with somebody and try to figure out, if you're really eligible or not. And of course, I do that at SBDC with any of these grants or programs. We can help you apply for them, figure out eligibility, gather the information and the content and the data, submit it and all that stuff. Or we can refer you to a resource, who does that. But yeah, first thing is, am I eligible? So one, you have to be agricultural producer or a rural small business. And so again, you're like, oh, rural small business. Well, what is that? Well, there is a criteria for that. And you have to be in an area with a population size under 50,000, I think. So you might, like in a town, I'm in Orangeburg, which is actually considered a rural area. Although Orangeburg, the city, is probably about 13, 14,000, but we have over 50,000 within a couple miles. So you might wonder, well, am I rural? So USDA actually has a map, an eligibility map. So if you just Google USDA eligibility map, it will take you to this site here, and you can come under rural business, and you see here's the REAP program right there. Let's see here. Go into property eligibility and click here for the following programs, and it takes you this map, right? And you just enter your address, enter 300 College Street, Orangeburg, South Carolina, and hit go. And here we go. It's right in the middle of downtown Orangeburg, and it is located in an eligible area. So based on this, that that you're in an eligible address. And if you are a for-profit business and you're in an eligible area, then you would be eligible for the program. So that's kind of a neat tool that they came up with, because they probably got a lot of questions on that. So that's the first part of eligibility is, are you a farmer, agricultural producer, or are you a rural small business? And you might think, well, I'm in Rock Hill or I'm in Charleston, same thing. You might be surprised to find rural eligible areas that kind of like weave their way inside and out of like Charleston or Columbia and things like that, because you might be kind of on the perimeter. Maybe you're on Johns Island, are you rural? Might be. So it's worth checking. So what are some kinds of assistance that are available through the USDA REAP program? As mentioned, the renewable energy systems and the energy efficiency improvements, they designate these the RES and the EEI grants and loans. So this actually is a fact sheet that I'm going to come back to, and we're going to go through in a little bit more detail, which goes over criteria of how to apply and a little bit deeper into eligibility. But I'm going to skip that for now and come back to it. So let's first talk about their first program. They have 4 products here. The first one is an energy audit and renewable energy development assistant grants. So what is this? Like Rick mentioned, the Office of Energy has the service where they can come out and do an energy assessment. But this energy assessment is just for nonprofit and government entities or state government entities. This particular grant is for nonprofits and other folks who want to get an assessment or an energy audit. The difference between an energy audit and energy assessment is an audit is a deeper, more comprehensive dive into, the energy consumption of your business. So it's going to be much more detailed report and much costlier, whereas assessment is a little on the lighter side. And if you're wondering why they have this service or they have this grant, it's because when we get to the part about getting alternative energy and energy improvement grants, depending on how much money you're seeking, you may have to get an assessment, or if you're seeking more money, you may even have to get an audit of your energy consumption at your business. So that could get expensive, especially when you're in the audits. So they've created this product where you can go in and get a grant to pay for that audit. And then you get that done, then you turn around and apply for the grant. So also a part of this is the Renewable Energy Development Assistance Grant, which would not apply to for-profit small businesses or farmers. That is more for, government entities like the SBDC or Department of Agriculture or someone like that or nonprofit who wants to provide technical assistance to the public, like I'm doing today, and like Rick does. So you can actually get a grant. I think it's up to $100,000 to provide technical assistance for a year. So that's just kind of for, government entities and nonprofits that offer technical assistance. So that's one product here. And I'm just flipping back and forth through the presentation. And that fact sheet is just the one that I just showed there. So how can the funds be used? So you have these funds, or you have access to these funds. You kind of know you're eligible. So what can you use it on? So the EEI, or the energy efficiency projects, these are about 7 different projects you can use it on. Lighting is probably the #1 project, or one of the top projects for sure, because lighting's pretty easy to replace, and it's probably one of the biggest bangs for your buck. If you have, old fluorescent lights in your business and you switch those over to LED, I mean, you're probably going to experience at least 80% reduction in energy costs from those sources. So it's got a huge bang for the buck, and it's fairly inexpensive compared to other projects, and real popular, easy to find, a lot of different people that'll do it as well. Okay, so we do have a question that says, are these funds available only for improvements, or can they be used for new installations? Okay, so this is mainly for improvements, but it depends on what you mean by new installations, I guess. I get that's why it's good to talk one-on-one with people. So, because every individual, I guess, situation is different. If you're replacing like existing fixtures, obviously that would be something. But if you're adding something entirely new, could be eligible if it's going to reduce your overall energy consumption. For instance, I had a client who they have a big warehouse area where they do some production and assembly of things. And each little station where they had employees they had little fans that they had on their desk that blew in their face, right, to cool them off. Well, they wanted to take all those little fans out, and they installed these gigantic fans. They're actually called big ass fans. And they're probably, I don't know, 14, 15 feet across, maybe more than that. But they're giant. They're like slow moving, right? So they did not have those fans. Those were not existing. Those were new installations. And those were covered under this grant because those actually help reduce energy consumption in the overall facility, because it kept the overall facility cooler by moving air, and, less stress on the HVAC system and whatnot. So yeah, depends on the project. Just a conversation that you would have to figure out eligibility of project. So initially we said you have eligibility of applicant, right? You got to be a farmer or rural small business. And then you have eligibility of project. So the question that was just asked would, be more of a project eligibility question. So you also have heating and cooling, HVAC. That's probably your next biggest or most popular item as far as energy improvement goes, because you can see a really great return on moving from whatever SEER rating you have on your current HVAC to whatever the latest model is, especially if you have an old HVAC unit. If you're getting to a higher SEER rating, then likely you'll see a lot of improvement in your energy bill from the heating and cooling. So that's popular. That's included. Ventilation is included. Fans, I just mentioned the fan. That's just like an overhead fan or a really big one. But there's different types of fans depending on the type of business that can be installed. Automated controls are very popular. I've had projects where when you walk into the room, the light automatically turns on. You walk out of the room, it turns off, or maybe it doesn't turn all the way off. It just turns 50% dimmed. It could be on timers, where it comes on certain times. And this can be done with HVAC. It can be done with lights. It can be done with a lot of things, but just automated controls, very popular, covered item. Insulation, I've done a couple projects where we put in insulation that were covered under this grant. And of course, y'all know insulation is going to help improve energy consumption. And also, there's a lot of things that ideas you may come up with. Trust me, I've heard a lot of different ideas. I'm sure USDA has heard many more than I have. It's just a matter of, does it make sense, and will it decrease your energy cost? Is there a net decrease on your energy costs? What's the impact, right? And so it'll be a little figuring out. You might have to roll it up to the state and maybe even to Washington, D.C. to see if it's eligible. But, we can do that. So these are some projects. And those are energy efficiency improvement projects, right? And there's a lot, there's a lot of stuff that's not even listed there that you could probably consider too, like window tint, things that conserve water, maybe not just temperature, water heaters, a lot of different things, right? So your imagination can really start going on when you start looking at your energy consumption areas and where you can save. But, when you get that assessment, which was talked about in the beginning, Rick mentioned that they identify energy saving areas, right? So if you could get an assessment, to begin with, then you can get a list of things and improvements, that you can make. This project, a lot of the times, the grant is only at 4% of the project, and I'll get into how much they pay shortly. But so a lot of the time you're going to have to put out money for this project. So, if you really have to determine whether the payback for the project is worth it. With the grant usually brings the payback down, or not, right? What works a lot of the times is if you're already planning on doing this. Like if you have plans to change your lighting out or to get a switch out of HVAC unit or get new refrigeration, and you have to do that or you're planning to do that, well, why don't you just, apply for the grant because you're going to do it anyway, right? So it works well with projects that are kind of already planned, unless you just want to go out and spend money on these improvements, which is great. And eventually you'll get your money back through energy savings, right? It might take a year, it might take 5 or 6 years or more, right? It just depends on the numbers. But I can tell you energy costs are not going down. So energy costs just continue to rise. So the more efficiency that you can implement into your business operation, you can kind of hold off inflation and energy costs and reduce that. Which brings us to renewable energy eligible projects. And as y'all know, renewable energy produces energy. And I think everybody on this call is familiar with solar energy, which is the most popular around South Carolina. South Carolina, as y'all know, has a lot of sunlight. And we are pretty well forested. So we're not open like you get out in the Midwest and, open areas, those are really good for solar. But, depending on where your facility is, it may or may not be good for solar. There are a lot of solar companies around now, so they can come out and make a determination as to whether it's right for you. As you know, you can replace a lot of your energy usage with solar. You would probably most likely still need to be connected to your utility provider. In some cases, I think it's mandatory even. But with solar, there's something called net metering. So if you're producing more energy than you're consuming, net metering is selling energy back to the energy provider, to the utility company, right? So they're going to buy, and they're not going to buy it from you retail price. I can tell you that much. They will buy it from you at a wholesale price, which is a lot less than you would have paid for it. But I mean, there is that opportunity there, and that is different from location to location. Net metering, sometimes net metering is allowed, depending on what county or area you're in. Sometimes it is not allowed. So you have to check with your local government and your utility provider to see if they offer a net metering, service, if that's something that you're interested in whenever you get solar. So anyway, solar projects are eligible: wind, small hydroelectric, anaerobic digestion, biomass, geothermal, and wave ocean power. And some eligible technologies. Of course, energy efficiency for retail, warehousing, and manufacturing. This program works really well for warehousing and manufacturing because you're talking about large spaces that have a lot of lighting, or heating and cooling. So you get a big bang for your buck, if you're upgrading your efficiency for these. But any of those greenhouses on the farm side, poultry farms, it's a big, I think if you are a poultry farmer, that energy consumption is probably your number one expense on your profit and loss statement, because the integrator usually pays for a lot of stuff. So what happens? So between labor and probably utilities, that's going to be your top two expenses, right? So if you can reduce that energy expense on your chicken house, then that's going to help you, right? So we talked about fans, if you're replacing, to a more efficient fan, or you're placing your controls, or whatever you're adding to make things cooler or whatnot, that's just going to help your bottom line in the long run. So those are eligible projects. Irrigation, the pivots there are run on, farmers run those on a variety of different methods, from diesel generators to electrical power or whatnot. So replacing these pivots, can be an eligible project as well, or replacing the power method on these pivots. Solar panels, we just mentioned that as a renewable energy source that can be used. Biomass, and the thing about biomass is I have a client that collects oil from restaurants, and they the problem is they would be eligible for this grant, except for they're just a middleman. They collect it and then they don't do any refinement and sell it for energy or convert it to energy. So if they're not using it for energy, then they're not eligible. So you really have to dig into the project and determine, you may work with biomass, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're eligible. So like I said, each project you have to look at geothermal and wind, hydroelectric, ocean generation. So all these different methods are eligible. So additional requirements. This is where I'm going to go into the fact sheet a little bit more and talk a little bit more in depth about the program. So if you go to the USDA, you can go Google USDA REAP, and it's going to take you to this page right here, which gives you a bunch of information, right? So the first thing it says on here is that you have a deadline, application deadline. And that deadline, there's 2 deadlines a year for this grant. And one is in November 2nd. It says here 2020. They haven't updated this yet, but generally around November 1st, November 2nd is what they call the small grant application. And then March, the end of March, for the big grant application. So we talked about who may qualify. What are buyer restrictions, and what is an eligible area? Buyer restriction is you have to be a citizen of the U.S. and legally a legal citizen and whatnot. Eligible areas we talked about in the address, and how may the funds be used? We just went over that. And so what funding is available? So this grant, REAP, it pays for 25% of an eligible project. So if you come up with a $50,000 project, then you can get a grant for $12,500 on the project. If you have a $6,000 project, let's just say you're replacing an HVAC for $6,000, then you can get a grant for $1,500. That is the lowest level. That's the low end. So it has to be a minimum of a $6,000 project or a $1,500 grant. It can be a maximum of $2 million, but minimum is $1,500. So for the grant part. So it's 25% of the project cost. Also, there is available a loan guarantee from the USDA. They call it the REAP guarantee. So the loan guarantee pays for 75% of the project. So again, if you have a $50,000 project, then you can get a loan guarantee potentially for $37,500. And then you can also get the grant at 25%, and that would be $12,500. And then, but the combined grant and loan can't be more than 75% of the total project. So any way you look at it, you're going to have to come out of pocket $12,500 for a $50,000 project. Still a decent deal if you needed the loan, right? And with any loan, you have to have some skin in the game. You have to have some cash that you put down into the project. But like I said, every individual project is a little bit different. So you can always look at financing and possibly stacking financing and things like that But this is one another product by the USDA is a loan. So I'm going to go back to the home page here for REAP. So these are some of the same things that we've gone over. Here it says, what is the maximum amount of loan guarantee? It's published annually in the Federal Registry. Loans approved receive an 80% guarantee. Here it's saying 80%. Up here it's saying 75%. And interest rates are usually competitive for that loan. Let's see. Now, getting down here for the renewable energy grant terms, mention, well, 2,500 now is the minimum. So if 2,500 is the minimum grant, then you're probably looking at 10,000 is the minimum project for renewable energy systems. And honestly, you'll probably be spending more than $10,000 on a renewable energy system, unless you're, working on a pasture, energizing fences and stuff like that. You might could spend $10,000 on energizing fences through solar. But either way, if that was, it would have to be at least $10,000, right? So the maximum for renewable energy system is 500,000. Which means that would be a $2 million project, right? So you can go up pretty high on the renewable energy. So a question just came up: can a solar grant be combined with federal tax discounts on solar? Yes. So you can stack incentives, and so you do. And I was going to mention that at the end. You do have state and federal solar tax credit incentives that are available. And you can apply for those, and you can apply those. So that shouldn't be an issue. What you can't do is you can't stack federal grants. And a tax credit is different than a grant. And I'll mention at the end, there are other federal grants for energy projects. And if you're applying for them simultaneously, you can't use them, together. You can't stack them. But these other incentives you can use. So the solar system, the renewable energy system, 10,000 to 2 million for the project. The energy efficiency grants, like I said, 1,500 to 250,000. So that would mean a $6,000 project to a $1 million project on alternative energy, energy efficiency grants. I'm sorry, on energy efficiency grants. So, two more things. Someone mentioned that they believe that the federal tax discounts end in 2021. I do not have that information. So I would definitely look into that. Do a little bit more research to see if, talk to your accountant about, or your CPA about those tax credits and see what's still out there and have them look it up for you. But there have been state and federal, they both may be due to end, and they could be renewed. You never know. And then someone else asked, how much are the tax credits? When we get to the end, I'll go to the information that I have, I believe, on tax credits. It's pretty generous from what I remember. I think it's like 35% of the project for federal, and then like maybe 25%, 20 or 25% for state. I think if you stack the two, it was almost like either 50% or 55%. I'm thinking it was 55% if you stack both credits. And then if you got the REAP grant, that's another 25%, making it 80%. Which would be 80%. So it would theoretically cover 80% of the cost of a renewable energy project, which y'all know tax credits are paid on the back end, as is this USDA grant. So they don't give you the money up front. You have to complete the project, and then you're given the funding. after the project is completed, inspected, all looks good. And I'll get a little bit more into that. So somebody did post in the chat. Y'all check the chat out. It says, in the case of property placed in service after December 31st, 2016, and before January 1st, 2020, 30%. In the case of property placed in service after December 19 and before January 1st, 2023, 26%. And then between 2022 and 2024, 22%. She says, I think, or Anthony says, I think they're scheduled to go away in the next few years. And that says residential. So yeah, you might want to double check residential versus commercial too. They might be slightly different. So yeah, so that's how much they pay. And those are kind of the lower and upper limits of what they pay there for renewable energy and energy efficiency. And it says additional requirements, applicants must provide at least 75% of the project cost if applying for the grant. So it's 25% grant. Applicants must provide at least 25% of the project cost if applying for the loan. So we talked about the loan a little bit. And as far as, you know, like you can't walk into your bank and say, I want to do a REAP guarantee loan. They'd be like, what are you talking about? You know, very few banks in South Carolina you utilize that product. You would really need to call the USDA Service Center and ask them for a list of banks that work with the REAP guarantee. And a lot of them would be out of state. There's some national banks that would work with it. There may be some local ones, but USDA Service Center could give you a list. So you couldn't necessarily expect your local bank to work with it necessarily. It says all projects must have technical merit and utilize commercially available technology, and energy efficiency projects require energy audit or assessment. So I'll go a little bit more into this. Go back to the top here. And, you know, it talks about the deadline for the 20,000 or below grant is due in November. If you go over to this section, which is how to apply, I want to show you one thing before I move forward on that. You see over here, it says Federal Register. If you click that, this is the notice of the grant. So you can actually go and read all of the fine details about the rules and regulations. A lot of interpretation involved in this too, of this program. It's available. So if you have a question, it's in here. The answer is in here somewhere, right? Sometimes it's hard to dig out, but you can always call the USDA and ask them, and they may be able to, or email them. They might be able to find you the answer quicker than digging through the notice here. It says, someone, Rick commented here that the federal tax credit is residential only, that the South Carolina state tax credit applies to both residential and commercial. So that's good information there. Let's see. All right, so that was that Federal Register is where you could refer to for your answers. And like I said, there is some interpretation still involved, even with the register, even as long as it is. There may be some sections where you're like, well, what does that mean? And there's been interpretations on it, I guarantee you that. So that would be the question then for your USDA Service Center. But when you go to apply, there's several forms that you'll need to submit. Which is a SF 424 application for federal assistance, pretty simple form. If it's a construction project, there's different forms, but there's 3 basic forms for applying for this grant. There's one, and it's based on the project amount. So there's an application for $80,000 and less. That's the project cost, $80,000 project. there's an application for 80, between 80 and 200, and there's an application for 200,000 and greater, where the project is 200,000 and greater. So the main distinguishing difference between these three applications is if it's an energy efficiency project, an EEI, once you get above this 80,000, that first application, 80,000 or less, you start to move from needing a energy assessment to requiring an energy audit. So what that's going to do is probably drive up your cost of applying for this grant. And if you need an audit performed, I'm not positive about how much an energy audit costs, but I can probably tell you it's an engineer or some certified type of technician who comes in and does the audit. And this audit takes quite some time to perform, and the report takes a while for them to do. So you're talking in the thousands, I would think, easy to do an audit. But if you're going for a $200,000 project or more, you know, let's just say it's a $200,000 project, an energy efficiency project. I mean, that's a $50,000 grant. So, you know, if an audit is several $1,000s, that's a percent of, you know, that might be a small percent. You cannot expense that audit in the grant funds either. You have to pay that audit cash out of your pocket before you apply. And of course, you know, they have a grant for the audit. Remember, I spoke about the grant that you can apply for to get the audit. So most of the projects that I've done or been the first application or the second application. I haven't done the third. The majority of them are this 80,000 or less project, which is what we'll talk about because the deadline for this application is in November. And I wanted to show you the application because as I go through the application, I can kind of, you know, answer some more questions. Someone asked, Laurie asked, could solar be combined with geothermal for a grant application? I'm not positive. I would think yes. It's kind of all the same. It might all be the same. It might be part of one project where you're adding, you know, energy production to your facility. So I would probably say yes, but I would confirm that with the USDA just to make sure. But hope that answers your question. So this is the application form. And so you start up here, you need your name, got to have, you know, legal name, you know, basic information up here, title for the project. Next thing down to consider is a SAM number. You'll have to get a DUNS number to get a SAM number. SAM is the Systems for Award Management, which is the system that the federal government uses to pay applicants for grant and contract awards. So you have to be in their system where you enter your banking routing number and checking information and whatnot. And that has to be kept updated. So anyway, you have to get a SAM number. So that's like, there's a lot of things you have to do, right, to prepare to apply for the grant. You know, if you don't have a SAM and you don't have a DUNS, well, you got to start first, you got to get a DUNS. Then you got to turn around and get that number. Then you got to get your SAM. And once you get your SAM and your DUNS, now you're ready to move on, you know, to the next part. So the next part is, you know, they're kind of, this next section is looking at eligibility to try to figure out if you're eligible. So are you a rural small business or agricultural producer? You know, check one of those. And then you get in here and they're going to want tax returns, 3 most recent years of tax returns. If you've only in business for 2 years, that's fine. Just however many years you have available. But you're going to need all those tax returns and you're going to need the information and you're going to have to submit when they ask questions like this documentation, you're going to have to submit like your cover or your first page of your tax return. You don't need to give them the whole tax return. Just give them the first page of each year. And that's going to help them determine eligibility as well, right? So a lot of the reason they want the tax return is to determine eligibility as a small business. or as a farm. Because if you're a farm, it might be a Schedule F that you would submit there. And then you come on down, average number of employees. If you have like 1,000 employees, you may not be considered a small business, right? But you may be eligible. So you can't necessarily jump the gun on that. Because under the next section, you have to enter a NAICS code, which is an industry code, the classification code. Depending on your industry classification is how they determine whether you're a small business or not, based on employee size and revenue and whatnot. So, so here you have to determine what your NAICS code is. And then if you come on down, they're going to ask for, some more information on income for agricultural producers and whatnot. So that first section is all about determining eligibility. And for everything you put in here, you have to have a document to prove it. They don't take your word for anything. You have to back it up with some legal document like a tax return, to show that, you do what you say you do, you are what you say you are. Then there's another section here where you can start to choose whether you want to do a renewable energy system or energy generation or energy replacement systems. And you start completing the project description, location, and give them some information here. And then you come on down to, let's see, section E is where you get into project cost breakdown. This is where you're going to determine what your project. So if it's like, let's say $80,000 project, since this is 80,000 and under, right? So you're going to have to list each line item. If your project is 80,000, you're going to have to list each line item, which, the sum comes up to be $80,000, right? And with each line item, let's say you have a lighting project that's 50,000, and that you have HVAC that's 30,000. So that's two different things, right? And so construction items might include the actual product cost and installation, right? You can include installation. So you would line item all those, and then your sum goes there, and that's what they're basing what you're going to get the grant off of. So if that comes out to be 80,000, then the grant is going to be for 20,000. And the thing about these construction items and the products that you use is that the product that you use have to be warranted, available on the commercial market. So let's just say you get lighting systems, you need to submit all of the specs on those lighting systems and the vendor information and the warranties, and all that information has to be attached to the grant. And for if it's HVAC system, all the information on the HVAC system from the manufacturer that can be supplied, all that needs to be attached corresponding with the construction item, right? You're also going to have to attach, if you're a contractor, his installation fee, that quote needs to be attached as well. So they're going to need all this information. So a lot of this grant is compiling all of your information on the expenses. So anyway, you move down to this budget item, down to estimated project energy generations or savings. So this section is just for energy generation. And then you have another section on cost of energy here, value of energy. I'm not going to go too deep into the technical aspect of this, but that's where we are now, into, kind of the technical side of it. You'd have to get into estimating a payback schedule. So, after your energy assessment is going to help determine payback, because you will determine a energy savings dollar amount. and then you can figure out, how long, what the payback period is on this savings based on your investment. So anyway, there's a whole technical section to this grant where you're going to have to get numbers from an assessment and plug those in, and kind of do the math, so to speak. The next section here is the roles of the qualified service providers that are working with you on the project. So one role is going to be your energy assessor or your energy auditor, depending on how much the project is. And that's for energy efficiency upgrades, by the way. You don't need an energy assessment or audit for a renewable energy project. Then you'll need, they need to, and your energy assessment, your energy assessor has to be qualified. They have to have some type of certification or qualification. They may not have a specific energy certification, but they may be an engineer with X amount of years experience in energy assessments. So it just depends. And you would need your contractor, whoever's installing or doing the work, the vendor contractor, they would need to be here and they need to be licensed. Everybody has to be licensed. You have to include their license information and whatnot and their qualifications. More technical aspects of the renewable energy project. And then that's section 6. And then you move on to section 7, which is technical aspects of the energy efficiency improvement project. This information will come off of the energy assessment. And you're determining savings here. And then section 8, how is this project going to have a positive effect on the environment? So you can check some boxes under this section. Generally speaking, this is always going to have a positive effect on the environment in one way or another, depending on what the improvement was. In this section 9, this is something that is pretty important. So let's say that this is your commitment of funds in the application. Let's say you want to do an $80,000 project. If you're going to do an $80,000 project, you have to show to the USDA you have access to $80,000 to pay for the project. You can't just submit an application and have $3,000 in your bank account and no other access to capital. That won't fly. You would have to show you have $80,000 access to $80,000. So how do you do that? That can be done in several different ways. You can actually have the money in your checking, savings, retirement accounts, anything. You don't have to break your retirement account. You just have to show you have a retirement account that is accessible, that might have that much money in it. You can get a line of credit at the bank showing that you have at least $80,000 that you can access. You can get a loan, and the banker can write you a letter and say, hey, they've been approved for a loan for $80,000 for energy efficiency project. So there's a lot of different methods, that you can have, but the bottom line is you have to show the USDA you have access to that money that's going to pay for the project. And under this section 9 is where you would, you might put, under source, you might put checking account, $50,000, line of credit, $30,000. And then you, of course, attach your documentation, which would be a copy of your bank statement and a copy of the bank line of credit with the bank's logo, address, and all that stuff on there. So that's kind of an interesting thing that people don't think about, is the fact that you actually have to have access to the funds prior to submitting the application. By the way, you can submit an application at any time during the year. It's open. It's just they have 2 deadlines a year. Like I mentioned, 1st of November, end of March. And those are the only times they're going to consider the application. So right now, applications have been reviewed past March. So anything that was submitted after March 31st, 21, if it is under 80,000, it'll be considered in November. If it's over 80,000, you'd have to wait till 2022 into March. But you can submit at any time. Another big thing to remember for either the energy efficiency projects or the alternative energy projects, you have to submit the application to the USDA prior to starting the project. So if you're, and I've come across this several times, where a business, they're kind of in the middle of a project, right? The HVAC is being installed or the lighting is being installed. And now they want to get the grant. Well, at that point, it's too late. You should have applied for the grant before the contractor starts work and invoices you for, the work. So it's for a project that you have in mind in the future, right? If you're in the middle of that project or if you just finished it, I've had people ask me, "Oh, I just finished that project. Can I still apply for it?" No, you cannot apply for it. You can only apply for it in advance. And then the minute that you the USDA accepts your application and confirms eligibility, then you can start on your project. So there may be a time period where they've accepted they received your grant and they've confirmed eligibility, but you don't know if you got the grant award yet, right? So you if you're counting on the grant award, you can take a risk and go ahead and start the project, but you may or may not get the grant. If you want to be sure, then you just wait until they announce awardees and you're allocated the award, and then you can start, knowing that you would get the money. So that usually takes, several months before they announce awardees. So if the deadline is November 1st, you probably won't know if you win the award till probably maybe 1st of January. You'd probably know something. Of course, you need to be in good standing with federal government and state government. There's a whole list of certifications that you would have to agree to, and some other forms that you would have to submit and attach as documentation. And you sign it, and that's it. So this application, as it goes for USD applications, is very technical application. It's not too difficult per se. It's just, you need to get that assessment, and then you have all those technical numbers. You need to compile a lot of information like your vendor invoices and, things like that. Like for the alternative energy, you don't have to have the assessment. So it's a little bit different. But it's not too bad. There's not a whole lot of narrative writing. A lot of people think, "Oh, I've got to write a grant," right? And use long narrative. Well, not in this case. It's more mathematical, and just compiling the information. And you just need to confirm eligibility and understand project eligibility, if it makes sense, and things like that. So that is the REAP program. If you want to contact someone at the USDA office, Jesse Risher is in Columbia at the state office, and he is over this program, and his number is here, which, like I said, you could just Google USDA Rural Development South Carolina, and you can find Jesse Risher's contact information there. This is his phone number here. You can call him as well. And Jesse could help clarify any questions. USDA will give you a certain amount of technical assistance on these applications. But, if you called someone like me, and there may be a few other folks out there that help I'm no charge, by the way. I do it as a part of our program assistance. I help guide folks through it. So we're happy to help there too. And then, I work closely with Jesse to get answers to questions as well. So a few more things I thought I'd, talk about in terms of energy programs is if you're in Dominion Energy's territory, they have a ton of incentives. So you can actually go to their website here and you may be able to access this through the Office of Energy site as well. But they have an Energy Wise program for lighting, appliances, HVAC, all types of things. If they're in Dominion, if they're your utility provider, they will remember that assessment that I was talking about? Dominion will come out and do that for free. So that's huge. So that would be no cost to you. So check out Dominion site. They have like a ton of programs, very useful. It could be very small as to a couple light bulbs that you're switching out to obviously a huge type of program. If you're not in Dominion, if you're in like Duke Energy, Duke has a lot of incentive programs just like Dominion. I would just go to their website and Google it and check it out. You may be in a cooperative. You may get your utility, your energy from a cooperative. You'd have to check with your specific cooperative to see if they have incentives. Some of them do, some of them don't. It just varies from cooperative to cooperative. Also, if you are a farmer, there is a program through NRCS, which is a USDA division or department. NRCS is Natural Resource Conservation Services. So NRCS is usually at your USDA Resource Service Center as well. And NRCS also has an energy program through their EQIP program. And it's called the On-Farm Energy Initiative. So they are a cost share program. So whereas the REAP program pays 25% of eligible project costs, the EQIP program may pay 50 to 90% of eligible projects on the farm. As y'all know, NRCS is only for farms. So this would not be rural business. This would be farm. And the idea behind, NRCS is conservation. So what are you doing to conserve energy? So kind of along the same lines, whether it's, with your irrigation or with, maybe even upgrading your tractor, to a more efficient tractor. It could be a lot of different things. But, that starts with a conversation with your NRCS district conservationist, who would have to do a conservation plan on your farm, kind of the first step. And then once they do that plan, you can kind of identify different projects that you might be eligible for. One could be an energy project, right? We mentioned the tax credits for state and federal. It looks like there are no commercial federal tax credits at this time, but there are state tax credits. And if I'm not mistaken, it may be 25%, but I would check with your CPA or accountant to do a little bit more digging and research on that. And everybody, is a little different. So, tax credits might affect you differently than other people. So you need to talk to the accountant or CPA to determine, whether this tax credit is right for you or not. And to see what the status of the state or federal tax credit is in regards to your project. So that's it. That's all I have today in regards to energy, which is a huge topic. Alternative energy, you know, is very popular, you know, trend today. And there are subsidies out there for your business or farm, rural business or farm. So if interested, please get in touch with me. There's my email address there, my phone number. That's my cell phone number. Get in touch with me. Be glad to talk to you. If I don't have the answer, I can route you over to the right person, whether it's Rick at the Office of Energy, or if it's someone at Dominion Energy, or if it's, you know, someone at the USDA or NRCS, or whatever the, you know, the organization is. Be happy to help. If you are considering one of these grants, you know, we're doing this webinar in July because you need some lead time. If you want to submit for November, now's the time to get started. So we got about 3 months or so, you know, until that deadline. So it's not time to do it in October. The time to do it is in July, August, you know, maybe September at the latest, to get started on a grant application. You never want to wait, you know, until the last minute for, especially for something like this, because you got, you know, there's information you got to get. It's going to take time to get assessments and to get, you know, vendor quotes and to get, you know, all these things put together. So can't tarry and wait too long on this one. It's not just like you're writing a narrative or something. But be happy to help. Like to thank Rick Campana for coming on from the Office of Energy to talk about their programs, and like to thank Kyle Player and Acre with the Department of Agriculture for sponsoring and helping promote these programs, to kind of spread the word about the different resources that are available out there for folks in the rural areas. And just appreciate all your time for coming on. And like I said, feel free to drop a line to us. We will, I'll send out some surveys after this, and also you'll get a recording of this presentation as well. So any other questions before we sign off? Okay. If I don't see it, so having no questions, we'll go ahead and end it here, and hope everybody has a great week, and take care.